This is Gordon Crow, creator and host of Mass Transit. We've been blessed to travel to 10 dioceses and film at more than 40 parishes, chapels, and stations, to include 2 cathedrals and a monastery. We've witnessed firsthand what many say is a priest shortage in America. We've also been blessed to meet dozens of faithful priests who give their all to serve God in ministering to His people. In this series, we share with you the stories of the journey of each of these men in discerning God's call to the priesthood. Each story is shared by the priest in their own words. This series is titled Vocation Stories and will be one of our weekly offerings on the Mass Transit YouTube channel. If you like Vocation Stories, please click the thumbs up button, leave a comment, and subscribe to be notified when a new episode is posted. My prayer is that these stories might inspire all who watch to ask, God, what do you want for me? Father Tanner Thooft was destined to be a farmer. At least that's what he thought. It was his passion since childhood to be a tiller of the soil. God had something different in mind. He called this farmer's son to be the keeper of sheep, caring for God's children, orienting them toward the Good Shepherd. The farming skills he honed for years on the family farm are not something that have been rendered useless. In fact, he can yet today be found on occasion piloting the harvester of a parishioner or navigating a snowplow through the parish parking lots ahead of celebrating Mass, officiating at baptisms, celebrating the Eucharist, hearing confession, or any of the sacraments of the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So I guess I grew up on a farm south of Minneota. We went to those parishes there at St. Edward's in Minneota and St. Eloy in Ghent. Grew up with a pretty normal Catholic family, fairly faithful, strong Catholic family. Did what every normal Catholic family does, just Mass on the weekends, prayer before meals, and that was really just about it. But when I started discernment for the priesthood, or thinking about the priesthood, really was after second grade, having received Holy Communion, starting to have the Lord work those graces in my life. I remember I just came to Mass one weekend, and it really struck me, what's so special about Father? Why do we got to come and see this guy every weekend? What's so special about him? He's not really all that entertaining. It's kind of boring as a second grader, and I didn't know really what to do with that. But there was that question, what's so important about this? And so as I spent time with that question really just followed me all the way through grade school. I went to the Catholic grade school at St. Edward's there, St. Edward's Catholic School. When the priest would come in and talk with us a little bit, he would answer questions in class. But as he was there, that question always remained of what is it about this guy? Why would he choose this life? Doesn't seem like a life that anybody would want to choose. You live alone, you pray all the time, your life is seemingly doesn't have any of the benefits that anybody would want in the world. But as I got into high school, recognizing that I had really set myself up for success. I had good grades, I was a good student in school, I had all the friends that I wanted, I was poised to take over the family farm, which was my love. I loved the family farm, it was the biggest part of my life. And I recognized in the midst of that, although I had set myself up for perfect success, I wasn't really happy. And so I really just got to a point where I reached out to the Lord and I was like, why isn't this working? Everything, humanly speaking, is perfect. It's set, I'm ready to go. And then He placed on my heart just this realization that I had worked so hard to set up my human life the way that I wanted to, that I had forgot to ask Him the question of what it was that He wanted. And that was why He kept placing that question on my heart. What is it about the priest? What is it about their life? And it really is just this total self-gift of one to the other through the means of the church, to lay down my life in sacrifice for the church, for the glorification really of God the Father and of Christ. And in doing that, is where God told me I would really find that happiness that I was looking for. So when I began to ask myself that question more seriously about, is God asking me to be a priest? What does that question even look like for a high school kid? It's kind of a scary question at first. I didn't really want to ask myself that question a whole lot, but I remember we had the opportunity when I was in about my junior year of high school to go on a retreat out to Irene, South Dakota. It's this retreat center called Broomtree. And while we were on the retreat, the reason I went is because we got out of 2 days of school. So perfect opportunity to get out of school. Why not go on retreat? We went on retreat, and while we were there, I was praying the Stations of the Cross. And as I prayed each station, that going back to understanding I had my whole life pretty much set up the way that I wanted to, but there was still that something missing. When I got to the end of the Stations of the Cross, I finally just asked the Lord, what is that is missing? And he said, it is me. I'm what's missing. And there wasn't really an answer to that question other than I'm what's missing. There was no instruction manual on this is what you should do. So I went and I talked to our priest at the time, my local priest, and I said, Father, I've had this experience. I feel like I need the Lord more in my life. I don't exactly know where to go with this. I've had this question about the priesthood my whole life. What am I supposed to do with that? So he looked at me and he said, well, it sounds like you need to go to seminary. And I looked at him back and I said, well, let's hold on here. Let's slow down the train because I think I know what I want to do. I want to farm. Farming's been my whole life. I love farming. Nobody else in my family is going to take over the farm. It's got to be me. I've got that figured out. Why seminary all of a sudden? And he said, well, the thing that you're looking for, what you're desiring, is to grow in relationship with God. He said, seminary, yes, it's a place that forms priests. Of course it is. It's what seminary does. But he said, more than that, what it actually teaches is the man how to hear God's voice, to grow in relationship with him. And then once you know how to hear God's voice, you just do whatever he tells you. I was like, life hack there. Okay, learn how to hear God's voice, go to seminary. Then when I'm farming, life will just be great. I'll say, am I supposed to plant beans or am I supposed to plant corn? Am I supposed to buy more pigs or am I supposed to do whatever? Because I'll be able to pray, hear God's voice, and he'll tell me what to do. So I thought, I can give seminary a shot. I'm sure it's maybe going to be a couple extra years of my life, but for the sake of the life hack, I'll do it. So I went to seminary at St. John Vianney College Seminary up in St. Paul, right out of high school, sort of thinking I'd be there for about 2 years. In my second year of seminary there, first year was just getting accustomed to the culture, getting accustomed to the rhythm of seminary life, getting into college, all of those new experiences. And the second year is where I thought, this is where I'm going to nail down and really figure this out. There was one experience I remember. I was coming home to help out with fall harvest. Fall harvest is great. I love being in the field in the fall, love helping my dad on the farm. And so I came home on open weekend, spent the whole weekend farming from dusk till dawn, everything that I could. And then it came time to go back to school on Sunday. So I remember I was getting in my car and I was driving back and it was picturesque. You couldn't have described it any better out of any movie scene. I was heading to the east as the sun was setting. So behind me, where the farm was, beautiful red sunset, picturesque, just like the heavens opening up, and I'm like, this is the sign. Because as I look to the cities to the east, darkness, clouds, gloom, and I thought to myself, here, the Lord is telling me, I finally have learned how to hear his voice. I'm supposed to go back and farm. When I got to seminary that evening, I was getting ready to, break the news to all my friends that I think I've heard my call. I'm supposed to go back and farm. This is what the Lord is asking me to do. But then all of a sudden, the Lord once again grabbed my heart and he said, no, there is a good there that I always want you to live from, but that's not what I'm asking you to do. And I was ticked off. I was irate. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's I love farming. I love doing that. How could I ever give that up? He said, no, I don't want you to give it up, but I want it to be transformed. And through a long process of discernment, through all of my 8 years of seminary, it was really learning how to be a father, as I had learned from my father, to live it out in the priesthood, all of those gifts that I had learned from my dad. So, back on the farm, what are some of those things that I learned? I learned everything comes through God's divine providence. You put your seeds in the ground, you plant your crops, but it's God that provides the rain. We can't do anything to provide the rain. We can't do anything to make the sun shine. God does all of that, divine providence. What does a father do? A father works hard to provide for his family, but in the end, he knows that the most important thing that he can do is to simply present his family before the Lord and to say, I'm just a man. You have to take care of them. I can provide for them, humanly speaking, in an earthly way, but other than that, you have to take care of them. And that's really where my heart lied, and that's what a priest does every day. Is a priest comes as a father of a community, of a parish or of an AFC, and he simply presents his family before the altar in the sacrifice of the Mass and says, Father in heaven, you have to take care of them. I can do everything possible to provide for their earthly needs, to manage the bills, to take care of the facilities, to push the snow, to mow the lawn, to do all of those things, to manage my schedule, to give them the time to be there, to offer the earthly human advice that I can. But in the end, it always comes down to your divine providence. You have to care for this parish. You have to provide for this family. And as a father, the best way that I can do that is to simply present them before you at the sacrifice of the Mass. And I learned that from my dad on the farm. And so when the Lord confirmed within me that no, I don't want you to give up the farm, but I do want it to be transformed, that's when I realized that everything that he had prepared in my life was to be a father, but not as I had seen my dad be a father, which was as a farmer, but it was to be as my dad was a father, but for me to be so as a priest.
We were all created for a purpose far greater than comfort or success. The Lord has a unique mission for your life. Whether He is calling you to the holy vocation of marriage, the sacred priesthood, or the consecrated life, do not be afraid to ask Him, Lord, what do you desire for me?